art graphically. First with paint, and then with ink. 500 years of printing history have led to today's dominant technology, offset printing. In our daily lives, we are surrounded by offset printed goods, which generate over $600 billion in annual revenue. But society is changing at computer speeds. Digital media is rapidly replacing many traditionally printed products. What does all of this mean for the future of printing?
What does all of this mean for the future of printing? And what does this mean for your future? Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. My name is Benny Landa, and I am delighted to welcome you here today. Many of us have met a Drupa here before. Perhaps a Drupa 2000 or a Drupa 95, or maybe even a Drupa at IPEX in 1993, when I had the privilege as the founder of Indigo to unveil the world's first digital offset color printing press. And it really is great to be back. When we were at those previous events, you might have heard me say that everything that can become digital will become digital, and printing is no exception. So, has it? Has printing become digital? Well, certainly there are many everyday products that are produced entirely digitally. For example, photo albums, short-run label printing, transactional printing, all digital. And since we introduced it in 1993, digital printing has exploded. Today, producing 1 trillion pages a year, all digitally printed. And yet, digital printing barely nibbles around the edges of mainstream printing, which produces 50 trillion pages a year. So only about 2% of all the pages are produced digitally. And that is the reason that we developed nanography, digital printing for mainstream, because of the other 98%. Now, as the name suggests, nanography is based on nanotechnology. Nanotechnology is the science of very, very small things. Things so small, they're measured in nanometers. Now, it's hard to imagine quite how small a nanometer is, so I will help you. Were this golf ball 1 nanometer in diameter, then a single human hair would be 4.2 kilometers in diameter. 3 times the diameter of the entire Drupa Messe site. Now, why has nanotechnology captured the imagination of society? Why is there so much hope for nanotechnology? The reason is that many materials, when you reduce them down to nano size, acquire extraordinary properties. For example, metals, when made into nanoparticles, have a lower melting temperature. Another example, certain materials, when made into nanoparticles as coatings, can provide extraordinarily high abrasion resistance. And yet other materials, when made into nanoparticles, can be very readily absorbed in the bloodstream, opening up avenues for new methods of drug delivery. And what we at Landa have discovered these past 10 years is that when you make pigments into nanopigments, they too acquire extraordinary properties. For example, they become extremely powerful absorbers of light. And that is why we incorporate our nanopigments into nano ink, and nano ink is at the heart of Landa nanographic printing. So what are the characteristics of Landa nanographic printing? Well, very high speed, the broadest color gamut of any printing process, very high density, the sharpest images of any printing process, very high gloss and what's called gloss fidelity, the ability to print on any kind of paper, coated, uncoated, without requiring any pre-treatments, and any kind of packaging film. These images are extremely abrasion resistant, have the lowest cost per page of any digital printing process, have the smallest footprint, consume very little energy, and for me the most important, are 100% green. So ladies and gentlemen, it sounds too good to be true, doesn't it? It does sound too good to be true. To help show you why this is real and how this is real, I invite you now to join me in the wonderful world of nano.
Hi there. Here we are, down in the depths of a sheet of paper, waiting to be digitally printed by inkjet. Though we are sheltered by all these paper fibers around us, they'll be of little protection. For when the dreaded drop hits, it will be like a tsunami, a tidal wave torrent that will drench the paper fibers and will mercilessly drown any nano folks like us. So we better get out of here. See, when printing processes apply ink to paper, the wet ink penetrates the paper. Now this is true for all printing processes. In the case of inkjet, however, there's so much water in the ink that the paper becomes totally saturated. But paper and water don't mix. The paper gets swollen, deformed, and cockled. The consequence of all that is that you have to heat up all that water and paper to dry it out again. And that consumes a tremendous amount of energy.
Now that we've shared with you some insights about inkjet printing, we would like to show you how Landa nanographic printing works. Have a look.
nanographic printing begins with the ejection of billions of microscopic droplets of Landa nanoink onto the special image conveyor blanket. Each row of ink ejectors adds its own color of nanoink. Each droplet of nanoink lands at a precisely designated location, blending with other droplets to create the final colored ink image. As each droplet lands on the heated blanket, it begins to spread and lose its water, becoming thinner as it does so. When all of the water has been evaporated, the ink becomes an ultra-thin, dry polymeric film. Let's look again. As the nano ink film spreads and dries, it becomes only 500 nanometers thick, the thinnest ink image of any printing process. The completed image is now ready to be transferred. Because of its unique properties, nano ink images have the amazing ability to bond tenaciously to any paper or plastic without penetrating the substrate. Upon transfer, the nano ink film instantaneously bonds to the paper, forming a tough, abrasion-resistant laminated layer, leaving no residual ink on the blanket. Nano ink images can be transferred to sheets or webs of ordinary coated or uncoated paper or plastic packaging films without any kind of pre-treatment. Since nano ink images are already dry, there's no need for any kind of post-drying. So two-sided printing becomes simple, and printed goods can be immediately processed right out of the press.
Now that you've seen how nanography works, I'm sure you're curious about the printed output. So we're going to now show you a comparison of the offset printed dots with which you are all so familiar, with inkjet printed dots and nanographically printed dots, in the case of this example, all on plain, ordinary, uncoated paper stock.
Offset printed dots have poorly defined edges and non-uniform density. Inkjet printed dots are even more ragged with poor optical density. And this is nanography. Note the extraordinary edge sharpness, high image density, and uniformity. Such a startling effect deserves a more in-depth explanation. You see, as the ink penetrates the paper, much of the pigment ends up below the surface, reducing optical density and uniformity. And just as ink gets absorbed into the paper fibers, it also wicks along the paper fibers, making the edges ragged. With Landa nanographic printing, a dry ink film is applied to the paper, so there's no penetration and the edges are super sharp. Since these ultra-thin film images are literally laminated to the paper, they conform to its surface roughness right down to the topography of individual paper fibers. This accounts for nanography's extraordinary ability to match the gloss of the paper, whether coated or uncoated. Unlike conventional inks, in which the pigment particles are many hundreds of nanometers in size, Landa nano ink pigments are merely a few tens of nanometers. These nanopigments are not only super efficient absorbers of light, but they also don't scatter light. These properties give Landa nanographic printing the broadest CMYK color gamut of any printing process.
So what we have seen so far is that the thickness of the ink has a profound effect on the properties of the printed page. And the thinner, the better. But thin images have an additional advantage. They cost less to produce. You simply need less material to make a thin image than you need to make a thicker image. And this comparison shows you various printing processes, and the comparative thicknesses tell you why Landa nanographic printing is the lowest cost printing process of any digital printing method. Now, I've been asked, why did we develop nano ink based on water instead of, say, solvent or UV? And the answer is really very simple. Even if our customers could afford them, our planet cannot. And that is the reason that nano ink is based on pure, clean water, environmentally friendly, plentiful, and certainly very cheap. Ladies and gentlemen, I would now like to give you a brief introduction into the entire family of Landa nanographic printing presses.
The Landa nanographic press lineup comprises 3 sheet-fed presses and 3 web presses, spanning the entire range of commercial printing, packaging, and publishing applications.
The moment you've all been waiting for, the stars of our show, the Landa S7 nanographic printing press and the Landa W50 Landa nanographic printing press. And to show you some of the amazing features that these products offer, I would like to introduce you to Robin Walton, my dear friend who's done Drupas with me in the past. Robin will be assisted by Oded and Elon. And ladies and gentlemen, I will be back. Thank you.
Let's start with an inside look at the Landa S7 nanographic printing press, our B2 8-color perfector, capable of printing at up to 12,000 sheets an hour. Landa nanographic printing presses have two things in common. They come in 4 to 8 color configurations, and they all have the most amazing user-friendly touchscreens. When it comes to particle size, smaller is better. But when it comes to touchscreens, bigger is better. And this 3-meter-long interactive display with its intuitive man-machine interface allows even an untrained operator to quickly become a master. The machine controls appear at both the right and the left end of the press, enabling operation from either the feeder or the delivery end. The right-hand section of the screen is dedicated to job management. Here, the operator can conveniently organize the job queue, aided by built-in job management tools, which, for example, might suggest the optimum press sequences for maximum utilization. On the left side of the monitor are all of the machine functions. The live, interactive graphics display not only the real-time function of every part of the press, but there are cameras mounted in the press that are feeding out live to the display to tell you what's going on with the sheet feeding, the image transfer, and the delivery. Every function, such as ink supply, paper supply, and operational status, are displayed in clear, intuitively comprehensible graphics. And now, to round things off, the Landa W50 nanographic printing press for direct mail, trans-promo, and publishing applications, capable of speeds at up to 200 meters a minute. Wow. And let's talk about productivity. These presses are an owner's and an operator's dream. Due to the high degree of automation, a single operator can manage 1, 2, 3, maybe even 4 presses at a time. Oh, thank you, Odette. He's got the W50 printing right now. And if he steps away from this press to run another press or to look at the paper inventory, the press will know that he's no longer in the immediate vicinity and automatically switch itself into vital signs mode, allowing him to see what's going on with the press from up to 40 meters away. In fact, he can not only monitor the press, but actually run the press from his remote touchpad. Thank you, Odette. And Elon has got a sheet he is going to magnetically mount on the display. And using his wireless loop, he's going to be able to look at, examine, record, analyze, and compare the results. Landa Nano Ink is provided in a concentrate in 15-kilogram containers that are easily replaceable by the operator and automatically diluted to working concentration in the customer's press using their own tap water, thereby saving lots of resources by not shipping water all around the globe. Empty containers of Landa Nano ink occupy very little volume and can be recycled along with your beverage bottles. And when it comes to service, there's never been a press with easier operator access. Behind the press are slide-out tool drawers with everything the operator needs. And as you can see, Alon has raised the display screen. He now has total access to the entire paper pad for jam removals or adjustments. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm so proud to introduce you to the architect of the second and the first revolutions in digital printing. Once again, Mr. Vinny Landa.
Thank you, Robin. Great job. Robin Walton, thank you so much. So, what does this mean for the future of printing and for your future? Well, if you are in packaging printing, I think your future looks pretty secure already. After all, for so long as modern society consumes food, it will come in beautifully printed packaging. But what about the rest of us? What about commercial printers? What do they produce? What do you produce? You produce brochures, flyers, sell sheets, magazines, newspapers, mailings. You produce printed graphic communications. One person communicating with another. Not one person in this room believes that 200 years from now, man will be communicating by smearing pigments on crushed trees. That just isn't going to be. The question you're asking yourselves is, when will this happen? When will printed media be replaced by iPads or whatever they call it by then, by digital media? Well, let me tell you, mankind has been communicating with paper for over 5,000 years, and with printed paper for almost 600 years. It will take many decades before printed media gets replaced by anything else. And for all of us in this room, and for our children, many decades is way beyond our horizon of concern. Our horizon of concern is the coming decades. And there we ought to be concerned. But there it's a different concern. There the concern is, how can my business prosper as the printing industry transitions from mechanical printing through digital printing to whatever else comes next? How can I make money from that? Well, today, each of you uses offset printing. And I want to tell you, there is no digital technology on the horizon that is going to threaten offset printing for the foreseeable future when it comes to long run lengths. Hundreds of thousands or tens of thousands, they will continue to be done with offset. But your customers are demanding of you ever shorter run lengths. And the trouble is, every offset job requires a complete set of printing plates, make-ready time, and waste. And therefore, the shorter the run lengths, the less profitable offset printing becomes. That's why digital printing was invented, to be profitable from a run length of 1. The trouble with digital printing is, so far, the cost per page, the limited format size, and the limited speed mean that as the run lengths get longer and longer, it too gets less profitable. The result is that there is an enormous gap between where offset printing is profitable and where digital printing is profitable, and that gap happens to be short to medium run length printing, exactly where your customers need you to be. And these jobs you already have, but you can't do profitably. And that's where Landa nanographic printing comes in. To fill that gap, to enable you to be profitable from a run length of 1 to thousands of B1 sheets. Yes, I said thousands of B1 sheets. Now these are jobs that you have to go out and find new customers or invent new applications. You don't need to look for personalization and variable information. All that will come. You'll do that in the future. The first thing you have to do is make your business profitable from the customers you've already got, from the jobs you already do, and that's why we're here today. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I hope that this has convinced you that you should buy a nanographic printing press. But why do I doubt that that's happened? The reason I doubt it is that you can't afford to make a decision like that. You can't afford to have a presentation at Drupa and have a guy saying to you, yeah, this is what's going to happen, and then for you to sign up. The reason you can't afford it is you, like all other commercial printers, you're a family business. For you to buy a printing press is a huge investment and a huge risk. You might have to mortgage your home to finance it. You might have to borrow money from your mother-in-law to pay for it. If you make a mistake, you are risking not only your livelihood, you could be risking your marriage. You cannot afford to make a mistake. So, don't listen to me. I'm telling you the future of the industry is nanographic digital printing. But it's not just me. The most trusted names in printing are now saying the same thing. Komori, Heidelberg, Man Roland, and they will be joined by others, have all announced, the week that Drupa opened, have all announced their next generation of digital presses are all going to be based on Landa nanographic printing. This has never happened in our industry before. Never before has there been industry-wide agreement, industry-wide consensus on one thing: the future of this industry is going to be based on nanographic printing. So I hope all of that gives you a higher level of confidence that you can indeed acquire one of these presses. But I'm afraid you're going to have to be patient, because we are not going to be shipping our first presses to customers until the second half of next year. The reason? Perfection. Your customers expect it of you, you should expect it of us, and we will deliver the most perfect, highest offset quality, performance, and reliability presses, but perfection takes time. And we need a little more time before we ship, and that's why we're talking about the second half of next year. Ladies and gentlemen, I hope we've given you some insights into the future, and I hope that indeed you have an interest in these presses. The good news is, though you'll have to be patient, you can today secure your place in line by speaking with one of our representatives on the stand. Each one of them will be happy to explain to you what you need to do here while you're at Drupa, what you need to do to secure your place in line when we start shipping these presses. Now I have only two things left to say. The first is, on your way into the theater, each of you received a souvenir, genuine fake leather briefcase. Please don't forget it in the theater. The second thing is, please don't get up from your seats until you see a message I've prepared for you. It'll appear on the screen in just a few moments. You'll recognize it. And lastly, ladies and gentlemen, I want to thank you so much for being here with us. I hope each and every one of you leaves this theater saying to yourself, wow, I have seen the future, and it's worth waiting for. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much. Thank you.